Star Wars Death Troopers, Chapter 3. Sorry, it's been a while, but I don't know if anyone watches these, but screw it, I'm reading this whole book and reading all of it. And recording all of it. Chapter 3, Where the Bad Air Goes. Not where the good air goes. Where the bad air goes. The bad air. Trig turned and looked up at the figure standing in front of him. You. It was a piggy-eyed guard, whose name he didn't remember, peering back at him through a pair of tinted, decidedly non-regulation optic shields. "What are you doing all the way back here?" Trig tried to answer, but found his reply lodged somewhere just beneath his gullet. Kale stepped in. You remember his brother, the vegetable, offering up an easy, disarming smile. "Just walking, sir." "Was I talking to you, convict?" the guard said, and without waiting for an answer, pivoted his attention back to Trig. "Well?" "He's right, sir," Trig said. "We were just walking." What? What? You're too good to move along with the rest of the scum?" "We tried to avoid scum whenever possible," Trig said, and then added, "Sir." The guard's eyes slitted behind the lenses. "You yanking me, convict?" "No, sir." "'Cause the last maggot that yanked me is doing a month and a half." Oh, I love fiction. Oh, back to the terrible story. "Understood, sir." The guard glowered at him, twitching his head slightly to one side, as if searching out some angle at which Trig's unblemished teenage face might somehow become threatening, or even make sense amid this larger mass of incarcerated criminals. Watching his expression, Trig punished himself by imagining a glimmer of recognition in those squinty eyes, and for an instant he thought how bizarre it might be if the guard had said, "You're Von Longo's boys, aren't you? I heard what happened to your father. He was a good man." But of course, no guard on this barge thought Longo had been a good man, or even bothered to learn his name. And now he was dead, and already so completely forgotten that he might as well have never lived. And the guard just shook his head. "Move along," the guard muttered, and walked away. The moment they were out of earshot, Kale elbowed Trig in the shoulder. "We tried to avoid scum whenever possible." A tiny grin dimpled the corners of Kale's mouth. "What, did you just make that up on the spot?" I just imagined Kale as just pretending to be drunk despite being a teenager. I don't know why. Trig was unable to restrain a smile of his own. It felt liberating, probably because he couldn't remember the last time he'd allowed himself of anything less than a troubled grimace. "You think he bought it?" "I think you almost bought it." Kale reached up without looking over and tussled his fingers through Trig's hair. "Keep smarting off like that. Smarting off like that, convict, and you will be down in solitary with the real dangerous types." "I hear there's a couple of hard guys down there now locked up tight," Trig said. "Could be our future customers." I'm really trying not to make sex jokes because Trig's a teenager, but hard types, customers, come on. Kale favored him with a glance of approval. "You've got a lot more of Dad in you than I thought," he said, and with one last look at the prisoners in front of them, nodded ever so slightly to the left. "Come on, follow me. Don't get crazy, okay?" "Sure." Trig sensed Kale slowing his pace, dropping back several strides, scarcely enough to be noticed, and adjusted his step to match his brother's. Up ahead, the main concourse broke off into the three prongs, branching off into a series of lesser thoroughways that crisscrossed the detention levels at every imaginable vector and angle. That was simulating me speed reading, because so much of this flowery nonsense is stupid. During his time aboard, Trig had made it his business to learn as much about the Purge's layout as possible, eavesdropping on conversations between guards and maintenance droids. Okay, now we're talking about real stuff. He had learned early on that there were 6 main detention levels, each one housing about 20 to 30 individual holding cells. Above that was the mess hall, followed by the admin offices, prison staff quarters, and the infirmary. Nobody talked much about solitary down at the bottom of the barge, nor was there much speculation about the literally hundreds of meters of narrow access routes, sublevels, and dimly lit concourses that honeycombed every level. Falling into single file, Cale and Trigg slipped through an open gateway, striding along the damp prefab walls, down a flight of steps deeper in the jaundiced subcutaneous bowels of Genpop. The air down here immediately became thicker, darker, and dramatically less breathable on its way to an array of refurbished air scrubbers before circulating back through the barge. "Well, well," a voice said, "the Longo brothers ride again." Trigg caught a quick breath, hoping it didn't sound like a gasp. In front of him, Cale froze, instinctively extending a hand behind him, and both of them peered into the open space that made up their immediate future. It took no extra time for Trigg's vision to adjust. Burp. He could already make out the forms of several inmates, all members of the Delphanium Face Gang, and in front of them, Our Miss. Aurmyss. I'm just going to say Our Miss. Whether Miss's nearly vertical sneer was a genetic accident or the result of one of his legendary knife fights was a matter of perpetual speculation among the other inmates. Below the flattened suede accordion of his nose, not accordions, a row of mismatched travel piercings dangled from the drooping lower lip, collected like trophies from all the other crew leaders while Miss and his boss, Sixtus Cleft. I love Star Wars names. Sixtus Cleft had slowly consolidated the Face Gang's position as the Purge's preeminent prison crew. "You're right on time," Miss said, piercings jingling as he spoke. Jingle dangle. Cale nodded. "We're always prompt." "An admirable trait for a prison rat." That's why I chose to do business with us." "One of many reasons," Miss said. "I'm sure." Cale smiled. "Did you bring the payment?" "Oh, yes." Miss produced a sibilant gurgle that might have been laughter and extended one spade claw hand pointing down at the empty floor in front of him. "It's right there in front of you. Don't you see it?" "They're gonna die." Trigg sensed, or perhaps only imagined, his older brother stiffening, preparing for battle, and willed Cale to stay calm. It appeared to work, for the time being at least. Cale kept his posture erect and didn't look away, careful to keep his own voice steady and calm. "Is this some kind of joke?" "Yeah, that's Cale. Is this some kind of joke?" "Perhaps." Miss looked at the Delphanium foot soldiers, standing on either side of him, grinning and sniggering. Sniggering. God, that's a word that exists. "Maybe you just don't share our sense of humor." "Our deal with Sixtus." "Sixtus is dead." Cale stared at him. "What?" "A terrible tragedy." Miss was almost whispering in the mushy sibilance between words. Trigg realized was definitely laughter this time. Long, weird paragraphs. Miss was almost whispering in the mushy sibilance in between words. Trigg realized was definitely laughter this time, accompanied by the faint metallic jingle of his pet earrings. ICO Wembley found him in his cell this morning with his throat slashed. "I'm the new skipper now." "Really? Skipper, that's what we're going with? Okay." He stopped, and then his voice abruptly frosted over. "And alas, the terms of our deal have changed." "You can't do that," Trigg cut in, unable to hold back any longer. "Sixtus and our dad." No, it's all right," Cale said, still not taking his eyes off Miss. And when he spoke again, he sounded absolutely calm. "I'm just sorry things worked out this way." Miss appeared genuinely curious. "Oh?" "None of this is necessary." Cale's voice was so casual It was almost like listening to their father talk. That same mellifluous, we can work this out inflection that had gotten them out of so many dicey exchanges in the past. You built a mutually beneficial relationship here, and it's crazy to jeopardize it with rash decisions. Rash decisions? Cale waved a hand in the air. Of course, we'll be happy to tell you where the blasters and power packs are hidden for your charge. Take them with my compliments. Consider it my gift to you as the new leader of the Face Gang. And everyone walks out of here to do business another day. A generous proposal. Miss seemed to consider the idea for a long moment. There's only one problem. What's that? Miss glanced at the Delphinian inmates slathering next to him on either side. I already promised my men that they could kill you. I see. Cale hove up a dramatic sigh. Hove? Who uses the word hove? H-O-V-E. That's interesting. In that case, I guess we don't have a deal, huh? No. I suppose there's only one thing left to do. Our miss tilted his chin upward slightly. And that would be... At first, none of them moved, and Trig had no idea what was going to happen. Then, before he realized it, Cale's hand blurred forward, moving faster than Trig could even see, his fingers hooking down to rip the piercings out of Mrs. face. That's why your parents tell you not to get piercings, kids. The Delphanian shrieked in surprise and pain, and one of his hands flew up to cover his wounded, spurting lips and nose. Simultaneously, the two inmates who had been flanking him burst forward in a rush, and Cale grabbed his brother's shoulder, spun him hard around, and thrust him back in the direction they'd come. Run! Cale shouted, and they did. Trig first, Cale behind him, both of them flying back up the corridor they'd just come down. Behind them, the Delphanians' boots clanged off the metal floor, and Trig could hear them shouting, coming closer. There was no way he and his brother could possibly outrun them, and even if by some quirk of fate they did escape, our miss would be waiting for them tomorrow and the next day, and, rounding the bend, Trig almost collided with a guard standing directly in front of him. The ICO put up both hands in a reflexive warding-off gesture, and the sudden stop that kept Trig from slamming into him was followed by an instant by Cale hitting him from behind. What's going on here? The guard asked. Nothing, sir, we just... Trig started, and it occurred to him that there was no reason why the guards would be this far down the walkways to begin with. And then, between the pounding rhythm of his own heart, he realized something else. The purge had fallen absolutely silent. The vibrations that had unsettled him, broadcasting their emanations up through the bones of his feet, ankles, and knees, had gone completely still. For the first time since he'd come aboard, the engines had stopped. Now we're getting somewhere. Some silly language in this chapter, but I'm enthused. Hope you like that. Like and subscribe, comment, have a time.